You're listening to the Raging SeaBears podcast. This podcast was originally intended to be the social media and the echo chambers. But as I started thinking about how to put this together, I came to the realization that there really needed to be more foundation before we get into the echo chambers that is social media. And this is going to sound weird, and I know it, but this goes all the way back to World War II. Well, it seems like a lot of things that are going on today go all the way back to World War II. We're going to start this with a quote from Adolf Hitler. And I said this in a recent quote about kids can't read. But it's such an important quote that I think everybody needs to know it. And this is Adolf Hitler, quote, "When an opponent declares, 'I will not come over to your side,' I calmly say, 'Your child belongs to us already. A people lives forever. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community.'" Okay, now this was a quote that Hitler delivered in Elbing, Germany on November 6, 1933. When they targeted children through propaganda and education and the Hitler Youth programs, because if you can get to those kids when they're young, if you can brainwash these little bowls full of mush, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, you can implant in them a thought pattern that will live in them the rest of their lives. Even the Bible makes reference to this, where it says the sins of the parents shall be passed on to the children and the children's children for 7 generations. Now there's another quote that actually is apropos to this very podcast, and that is by Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels was the minister of propaganda for Adolf Hitler, and he has a quote that echoes in my mind a lot. He said, quote, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." That is so profound. Let's hit it again. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. Now, one thing that sticks in my mind when I look at all the chaos going on in the world today is that Hitler had the Hitler Youth, right? He brainwashed those kids. Now, at the end of World War II, 2 things happened. One, the Nuremberg trials, where all the Nazis were put on trial, allegedly, and executed, allegedly. And 2, there was an operation called Operation Paperclip. And there was Operation Paperclip is where they actually took Germans that they felt were strategic to the United States national security and imported them into the United States. These were Nazis, right, that we brought into the United States and put them in key positions in the military and the government. And part of this program includes the foundation of the CIA. Now I want you to think about this. If you're raised as a Nazi, being fed Nazi propaganda when you were a little child, being raised in the Hitler Youth, those thought patterns are embedded in your being. That's who you are. Just like if you were raised loving football, you're going to love football your whole life. If you were raised loving baseball, you're going to love baseball your entire life. If you were raised as a ballerina, you're going to love dance your entire life. Whatever you were raised loving, you will love for the rest of your life, even if other people disagree with you. And here's a good example. Not too long ago, I walked into a shop here in Atlanta, and there was a guy dressed head to toe in Chicago Cubs gear. Hat, jersey, the whole works. And I made a comment to him. I'm just like, do you live here? He said, yeah. I said, well, then shouldn't you be wearing Braves gear? He said, no. He says, my heart and soul is in Chicago. Even though he lives in the South, he lives in Braves country, he still roots for Chicago Cubs. You take a Nazi out of Germany and put him in the United States, do you really think he changed in his heart when he was raised a Nazi? Seriously, think about that one. Now you've been raised as a Nazi. That's all you've known your whole life. But the war is over, and now you're being tried for war crimes. And you're given the choice. hey, we're going to either hang you for being a Nazi, or you can renounce being a Nazi, and we're going to bring you into the United States, and we're going to put you in a nice house and give you a great job in the United States government, building rockets or developing chemical weapons or running an intelligence agency. Gee, what am I going to take, right? Oh, yeah, I'll come to the United States. Yeah, Nazis. Who wants to be a Nazi? But deep in their heart, they're still Nazis. And we brought these people over and put them in key positions of power. Now, I want you to think critically here. Do you think that there is any possibility that this could have had an influence on the shape of the United States over the past 50, 75 years? Could it possibly be influencing what's going on today? Put on your thinking caps. Okay, a quick example of a key Nazi that was brought into the United States was Werner von Braun. He was the rocket scientist who invented the V-2 rocket, and he was brought into the United States and was the chief architect of the Saturn V that put Americans on the moon. And we know for a fact that von Braun ran the V2 factories where Jews were worked literally to death and their bodies were stacked like cordwood outside the factory gates. And this man ran our space program in the 1960s. But back on the CIA, a quick nickel tour, and by the way, the full documentation can be found in a book called the Medusa Files, and I'll put the link below. I also referenced it in a prior video. But when the Allies and Russia were both closing on Germany, the Nazi spies knew that the war was over. And they basically asked themselves, who do you want to work for? Do we want to work for the Americans and the Allies, or do we want to work for Russia? So they picked up all their stuff and they headed west to the American lines and surrendered themselves. So at the end of the war, when the CIA was founded in 1947 and the Cold War was heating up quickly, we had no human intelligence in Russia, in the Soviet Union, called human. So as a result, the CIA was actually founded around not just the OSS, but the Nazis that ran the Nazi intelligence organizations in Nazi Germany and the spies that were already in place in the Soviet Union. The Nazi spy organization, and I'm going to butcher this name, and I apologize to any Germans out there, the Sicherheitsdienst. They were also known as the SD. Not to be confused with the SS, which was the Schützenstaffel, meaning protection squad, right? They were the paramilitary organization that basically kept everyone in line, and the Gestapo, which was the secret police. Anyways, I mean, I'm giving you this basic background because the CIA, having Nazi spies, wanted to expand its power. So they started feeding lies to the American government and the American public about bomber gaps and missile gaps, which, of course, immediately had a knee-jerk reaction of money being funneled into the CIA to expand its intelligence gathering in the Soviet Union. But at the same time, they were also expanding operations in the United States, one of which was called Operation Mockingbird. Now, we know that Operation Mockingbird has been around since at least 1953. In fact, there was an article in the Rolling Stone magazine on October 20th, 1977, and it says the CIA and the media. In 1953, Joseph Alsop, then one of America's leading syndicated columnists, went to the Philippines to cover an election. He did not go because he was asked to do so by a syndicate. He did not go because he was asked to do so by the newspapers that printed his column. He went at the request of the CIA. Oslope is one of more than 400 American journalists who in the past 25 years have secretly carried out assignments for the Central Intelligence Agency according to the documents on file at CIA headquarters. They were also involved in a wiretapping operation in 1963 involving 2 journalists believed to be disseminating classified information. All of this came under scrutiny in the 1970s, and particularly 1975, when the Church Committee, which was centered around Senator Church, investigated the entire thing. And here's Senator Church.
I thought that it was a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now we're looking at that very carefully.
So the Church Committee, run by Senator Church, you just heard from, dug into this and found out that the CIA was in fact influencing the news outlets in the United States. And to put another nail in the coffin, here is the president of CBS News from 1954 to 1961, Sig Mickelson.
I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Am I the only one that caught that? Here's the president of CBS News saying that it was still going on, that the CIA is still feeding information to news reporters, and they have to keep it on the DL, because if the American people found out about it, there'd be hell to pay. So, as a result of all this scrutiny, the CIA was ordered to stop Operation Mockingbird in the United States, but they still had the license to do this overseas. And because Americans have the memory of a goldfish, under Obama repealed the propaganda ban, which allowed the government to spread government-made news to Americans. If you were on my YouTube channel, you're looking at the article. And if you still think this is ancient history because Obama was president over a decade ago, never mind the fact he's still involved in politics and was seen at the White House multiple times when Biden was the president. So to answer that question, is Operation Mockingbird ancient history? The answer is a simple no. It is alive and well. And here it is, for your viewing pleasure, Operation Mockingbird.
Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 For those of you on the podcast, you just witnessed dozens of news reporters reading the exact same line. Who wrote the lines? You ever ask that question? Who's feeding this information to the news media? By the way, here's another example of you repeat the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. People tend to believe it. We are not a democracy, people. We are a constitutional republic, and I can prove it in about 5 seconds. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Not a democracy, it's a republic. And yet, they keep telling you that we're a democracy, and you ask anybody in this country, they're all going to tell you we're a democracy, and we are not. I think that's the simplest example of how this brainwashing works. And if that wasn't enough proof for you, you guys may remember that after Elon Musk bought Twitter, he released what was called the Twitter files. And again, if you're on the YouTube, you're looking at one of his tweets. Government paid Twitter millions of dollars to censor info from the public. Not just that, but they also instructed social media platforms to ban certain people that they thought was a danger to the narrative. Again, on YouTube, I'm showing a tweet that says they also received an astonishing variety of requests from officials asking for individuals they didn't like to be banned. Here, the Office for Democrat and House Intel Committee Chief Adam Schiff asks Twitter to ban journalist Paul Sperry, who's a conservative investigative journalist who is highly critical of both Bush and the Obama administrations. He wrote books like Crude Politics, How Bush's Oil Cronies Hijacked the War on Terrorism, or Infiltration, How Muslim Spies and Subversives Have Penetrated Washington, or the Muslim Mafia Inside the Secret Underworld That's Conspiring to Islamicize America. So here's Adam Schiff, a sitting United States Senator from California, asking to ban a journalist, which is a clear violation of the First Amendment. And when it comes to censoring social media, a couple things that really come to mind is the COVID vaccine. Dr. Robert Malone, who invented the mRNA vaccine, tried to get the word out on social media that it was never intended for distribution. It was purely a proof of concept experiment. And when he tried to tell people not to take this thing, that it was inherently dangerous and untested, he was banned from social media and went so far as being threatened to be arrested as a domestic terrorist by the federal government. This was the man who invented the vaccine, trying to tell people not to take it. And because it went against the public narrative, because it went against the will of the United States government, he was censured and threatened with jail. Now, I am not even going into the whole COVID vaccine. I may do that in a future video if you guys want me to, or future podcast. Put a comment below if you want to hear it. But, think about this. They silenced any opposing point of view to the vaccine. That alone should raise serious concern in every red-blooded American, that they would silence an opposing point of view. And then they have the audacity to say that the conservatives are Nazis? Who's silencing who? And let's not forget the crazy bitch that Biden tried to make the Czar of Disinformation. And her name was Nina Jankowicz. And here's a little song that she posted on YouTube to help refresh your memory.
Laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. It's how you hide a little lie when Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine. Or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain. They're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote. Oh, information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origin seems slightly less atrocious.
Seriously, she was appointed by President Joe Biden to be the disinformation czar, the truth czar, to tell you what to believe and what not to believe. We haven't even touched on social media and the echo chambers, but I think this is a pretty good foundation to start with. To summarize this podcast, the CIA was founded in 1947 around a Nazi core of spies that were already in place at the end of the war. They lied to the American public about the bomber gap, missile gap. They started Operation Mockingbird to disseminate propaganda through news organizations, not just abroad, but they brought it back to the United States. It was found out in 1975 and stopped domestically, but was reinstated under Obama and was funded by USAID. Why do you think Trump went after that first with Doge and shut it down? Since then, they've been scrambling to find additional funding. And that's a whole nother video. But think about it. When did all this crazy shit start happening in this country? When did all the weird lies start coming out? And then it's repeated over and over and over. Go back to that video I just showed a couple minutes back. It's still going on, people. And, you know, it is brainwashing at least half of this nation. Anybody that watches mainstream news, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, you are being inundated with this. Fox also does it, but not to the same extent. We are being controlled, people. It's not hard to figure out. You just got to put the pieces together. Anyways, I'm getting long again. I'm going to put out the next one on social media and mind control. I know I've said that before, but I think this one was necessary for the foundation. We have established that if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. We have covered that mainstream media is doing exactly that. It's spreading into social media. I kind of touched on it with the Twitter files. And then we're going to go into the echo chamber where it continues to echo and brainwash kids' minds. I'm going to leave this off with a little story to kind of grease the wheels for next week's drop on the echo chamber. A few years ago when I was driving into work, when I was still in corporate America, I was listening to a talk show. And on that talk show, this 17-year-old girl called in and proceeded to say that everyone in the news center were stupid and ignorant because everybody knows that a man can menstruate. She was dead serious. She went on for some minutes about how everybody in that radio studio was absolutely ignorant of how biology works because she knew for a fact that a man could menstruate. This is the damage that this propaganda and the echo chambers are causing. You wonder why we have 103 genders? You wonder why men and women think that they're the opposite sex? You wonder why men are trying to compete in women's sports because they are convinced that they're girls? Here's a hint. Mommy wants to be popular in the social group, so she convinces her child that they're the opposite sex, which we just illustrated that if you drill it into somebody often enough, they believe it, especially a small child. So now Mommy's the popular one in the group because she has a transgender in her family. Right? We'll actually end it on that. We'll repeat Goebbels' speech. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. And with that said, that's it for this one. This is SeaBear, out.